want to welcome you to Grit for Life, the Director's Workshop, Week 3, Day 2. Today we're going to be talking about the aspect of changing the perspective. If you can imagine maybe one of your favorite movies, anytime that a scene builds, whether it be the opening scene, whether it be a scene in the middle of the movie, maybe the ending scene, maybe a scene of suspense or horror or comedy, it's all about the perspective of the camera. Directors will sit there and take time to make sure that the camera view of what the viewer is going to see captures the essence of what they are trying to depict when it comes to the story or the emotion that they're trying to get the viewer to experience. It can be something as zooming in from way up high, soaring over a cityscape, or being really close up to a face of an actor or an actress. Maybe it's from the back and you get to see what they're seeing, or maybe you get to see toward their face and they can't see what's behind them, but you, the viewer, can, and it gets you emotional, like, oh my God, don't turn around. Life is that way. And as we look at being the director of our lives, we have to understand that so many times the things that happen in our lives that paralyze us, that stop us in our tracks, or seem overwhelming, if we will learn to be able to change the camera's perspective in our mind, we can learn there's always a different way to see something. In Grit for Life, I talk all the time about learning to be able to focus on a different perspective, to step over to the side or turn around and take something that was meant to be negative and learn to look at it from a different perspective and take something positive from it. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that everything that we go through that is negative or scary or seems like an obstacle can just be changed in our lives by changing the perspective. I'm not saying, for example, the death of someone in our family or someone that's close to us. I'm not saying that just by changing the perspective, we're not going to be sad. We're not going to have heartbreak. We're not going to go through grief. No, but all of that is the scene. Now, step away and look at it from the different perspectives of different characters in that scene. Put yourself in different places. By doing this, we can actually even learn to help diffuse combative situations, whether it be arguments with our significant other or our family member. Or maybe it's having an issue with someone at work. If we can learn to take ourselves out of the perspective that we see it for just a moment, change the camera angle, and see it from somebody else's perspective, this does a few different things. One, it helps us have empath, or it helps us have empathy for that person. It can help us see the world in a bigger and different light. By doing this, it expands our world. It expands our knowledge. It expands our understanding of ourselves and others. And it expands our understanding of the situation. I want you to think for a moment. You are watching somebody, and in the movie, you see someone with a knife and it looks like they've got it up, but you can't see what they're about to do. You're seeing it from the back. Looks like they're about to kill somebody. And your heart would race if that's what they're really doing, and the suspense is really big. But then the camera perspective changes, and you realize they're cutting up vegetables. It's that simple. It's nothing really big. How can we put that into the aspect of directing our lives? So many conflicts in our lives when we are dealing with other people, so many times comes from us seeing it from the in an essence, the back of somebody. And they have that knife, and we think they're going to kill us with their words or their actions, or we create the scene in our head of how we think it's going to be, and we automatically create defenses against what we perceive. But if we can stop the filming, change the camera perception, we see that in reality that's not what was happening. They're just cutting vegetables. It allows us to be able to react more truthful, with more understanding, and sometimes calmer, more control. When we gain that control, we gain that understanding, we are gaining back the director's chair of our life. We can heal relationships. Many times in my life, what I have discovered is that when it comes especially to communication, in the past, when I have been very quick to react, very quick to go ahead and cut the filming of the scene where it was and think I already know where this movie's going, I found myself holding an empty bag, holding an incomplete scene, being heartbroken or hurting somebody else that I didn't want to hurt. But when I learned to step back, put it on pause but not cut, and change my perspective, I learned to be able to see the world through someone else's eyes. I learned to be able to control my response. In Grit for Life all the time, we talk about your response is your responsibility. As the director, the scene is your responsibility. Now, maybe you change the perspective and you do see that, yep, it was just going to be someone killing somebody. It wasn't cutting carrots. It wasn't cutting vegetables. But now you know. Now you know for a fact that's what the scene was meant to be. In our lives, when we perceive obstacles, when we perceive things that seem to just devastate our dreams, shut us down, well, we can either change the perspective and see if it really is that way, or we can just stop filming right there. And we'll never know. It's like watching a film that never gets ended. And you're always wondering what could have been. But you stop filming because somewhere along the way you automatically didn't want to see anymore because you assumed you knew how it was. You didn't change the perspective. I've had times where I've lost jobs. And when losing those jobs, I thought, wow, this is not what I thought. And I was angry, and I allowed my emotions to take control instead of me controlling my emotions. I allowed fear to creep in. As I got older and learned the aspect and how to use the tools of changing the perspective of being the director of my movie, I learned to stop. And as I stopped and turned the cameras to a different angle, I saw a whole different picture. And seeing that picture, I began to watch as the universe's fingers worked together into one big, amazing, beautiful movie scene. So I challenge you to learn to do that. The more that you learn to be able to do that, the more you will begin to see that our life, film or frame by frame, really is a beautiful masterpiece. And it all comes together. Just like a movie, it doesn't come together just in 10 minutes or 15 minutes. It doesn't come together in one scene. It has to build up. But if you only look at it from one perspective, you miss so much. One of the things I love about movies is I love to watch the behind the scenes, or I love to watch later the mistakes, the bloopers. Such as in Braveheart, where Mel Gibson's character is running across a battlefield, and he's running and he's carrying an axe, and then all of a sudden it comes back to him and he's running and he has no weapon at all, and then then it cuts away and comes back and he's running and you think he has a sword or maybe the axe again. Or the famous scene from 3 Men and a Baby, where supposedly a ghost is haunting the scene, and if you look in it as the camera pans, there's a little boy standing behind the curtain in the room that they're in. There's so many different things I love to watch, to be able to see. That's life, though. You see, if we're not changing the angle and panning around, there's things we miss. When we focus only on one perspective, life becomes like tunnel vision. The movie becomes bland, becomes depressing, becomes not something worth really watching. But the moment we're allowed to sit back in that director's chair and guide the camera to different angles and different perspectives, then that movie, that's one worth watching, because we see so much more. For those who are doing the workshop, if you're just watching this on YouTube and you're not doing the workshop, don't have to worry about this next part unless you are doing the workshop later on watching this on YouTube. But for those who are doing the workshop, your soul portion today is I want you to pick something in your life. Maybe a time where you had a dream and a vision and you felt that it got stopped. Maybe an argument that you had with a significant other recently or a coworker. Maybe an altercation. And I want you to stop for a moment. And I want you to replay that scene. But take yourself out of the one perspective. And I want you to start looking at the perspectives all around. Is there a way that your dreams still exist? You just got to look at it from a different perspective. Is the obstacle that you have felt that has been unmovable in your life, if you move to the right or you move to the left, is there a way around it that you haven't seen before because you are so focused on the obstacle and not the scenery? Is there an argument that you had that, if you really stop and think about it, and you look at it from another person's perspective, maybe it's just a miscommunication, misunderstanding. Maybe if you're able to see it from their perspective, you can hear the words coming out of your mouth and realize that if those words were said to you the same manner, the same way, maybe you would have reacted how they did. Or maybe it's just standing over to the side and enjoying the scenery of life. Whatever it is, I want you to find those moments, and I want you to pick one, and I want you to write about it. You don't have to share this in the workshop unless you wish to, but I want you to really dive deep and think about it. How can I change my perspective and camera view that changes the way the scene looks? Showing me that I, as the director, have the control and that I am not at the mercy of the camera. Your response, your responsibility. Go grit it.